Understanding music theory on the guitar, especially if you don't have background in another instrument like the piano, can be fairly tricky because the guitar is set up in such a way that it's not immediately clear what you're doing when you're switching strings. How far are you going in the sense of what kind of an interval are you moving? You gain that understanding over time, but there's a couple of things I learned along the way that really helped me to decipher the patterns of the guitar much better. And I learned to look at music theory through the lens of a single string first as a place to start when understanding harmony and scales and all of these things. So I want to share some of the things that helped me along the way to understand music theory better on the guitar. And we're going to look at some patterns on the first string. We're going to look at the major scale pattern. We're going to look at the 4 main types of triads. And we're going to look at the 5 main types of 7th chords. And I'm going to walk you through some exercises that will help you master these ideas on a single string. So we're going to do it all on the first string. And we're going to start with the major scale briefly. And then we'll move into the types of harmony that we're going to cover, the triads and the 7th chords. So the goal here is that by understanding these patterns better on a single string, you're going to be able to apply them better across the different string sets of the guitar and navigate some of those complexities that come from switching strings. When you increase your understanding of the basics of music theory, and then you look at what the different string pairings are tuned to, you can better find those intervals between different strings, which is what building chords is all about. And being able to build your own chords and chord voicings and to adjust them how you want and know what scale tones you're playing for embellishments and everything is really important when you get to soloing and when you get to making your own parts, writing songs, and all of these things. So we're going to start with just a basic major scale on one string. And I'm going to have a PDF that you can download and print or just download and view as you're running through this. And the link to that will be available in the description of this video or on my website if you're viewing it there. So starting with the major scale, we're just going to be on the first string. And I'm just going to show you how I play a major scale, the fingering I use on a single string. So I'm going to go from open to the 2nd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. And here I'm going to shift to the 7th fret with my first finger, the 9th fret, the 11th fret, and the 12th fret with my pinky. So I play the full scale like this. And to practice this, I would do that, and then I would return back down the exact same way, shifting to my 3rd finger on the 5th fret. So to practice it, I would just go like this. And that lays out the basic framework for the harmony that we're going to use, because that's the major scale is really kind of the template upon which we talk about harmony. So when we talk about a major chord, we talk about the 1st and the 3rd and the 5th of a scale, and a major chord is based on the major scale, the 1st note, 3rd note, and 5th note. So that numbering 1 through 7, and then the 8th being the octave, is helpful. So again, that major scale. That's the only scale I'm going to go over in this video, but of course you can play all of the different scales and modes on a single string, and especially when I was learning the more complex modes of, say, melodic minor, it was really helpful for me to try some of those very strange sounding modes. Like the altered scale, the 7th mode of melodic minor, had a very strange sound to me when I first learned it, but by practicing it on one string, that helped me not only understand the chord that was paired with it, but also the unique character of that mode. So that's a great way to approach your scales and modes when you're learning something new that's new to your ear and kind of foreign to it. So we're going to go into the 4 main types of triads. And I consider these the 4 main types. We have our major triad, our minor triad, diminished triad, and augmented triad. And those are the most important And the major, minor, and diminished are the three that you would find in a normal major scale when you're playing the scale in chords. So to play a major triad, you're just going to pick out the first note, which is E in this case, the third note of that scale we played, which is the G sharp on the 4th fret, and then the B on the 7th fret, which is the 5th of the scale. And that is our major triad arpeggio on a single string. And here's an exercise that I'm going to walk you through using, well, for all of these triads, for these 4 triads, we're going to do the same rhythm. So we're going to play the triad like this. I'm going 1, 3, 5, and then a quick 3, 5, 3, 1. The goal is just to add a little bit of musicality and rhythm to it so that it's not such a dry, bland exercise. So that's the first part. So we're just going to go, and then what I did there, just went up to the octave. I went 1, 3, 5, slid up to the octave, and then slid back down to the 5, 3, 1. So 2 parts of the exercise, first half and second half is this. So we're going to do that on each of the 4 types of triads. Again, I'll do it real slow. And on the slide down from the octave back to the 5th, I'm not plucking again. I'm using the slide to sound out the 5th after I've plucked on the 12th fret. And the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So we're going to apply that to the minor chord, or the minor arpeggio. In order to make a major arpeggio into a minor, or a major chord into a minor chord, 2 of the 3 notes will remain the same. We're just going to lower this third by a half step. So that'll be a G natural on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. And now we're going to do the same exercise. It's going to be a little bit more of a reach with my 3rd finger. I can still make it, but 4th finger can be more comfortable for some people. I'm going to use my 3rd finger, I think. So we'll see. Ready? Here I go. That's our 1, flat 3, 5, making an E minor arpeggio. The next one is going to lower the 5th. This is going to be the diminished chord. And the diminished chord is built with a minor third and a minor third. So 2 minor thirds. The major chord, if we go back to that, was a major third followed by a minor third. And if you know your intervals, then this is not new information, but a major third is just 2 notes that are 2 whole steps apart. A minor third is 2 notes that are a step and a half, or a whole step plus a half step apart. So this is a major third from the E to the G sharp is a major third, from the G sharp to the B is a minor third. Now when we make this a minor triad, it's a minor third first from E to G, and then a major third from G to B. When we make it a diminished triad, it's going to be a minor third from E to G, and then another minor third from G to B flat. So if I apply that same exercise to the diminished triad, it would be like this. And my slide ends up being a tritone, which is the name of the interval. That's 2 notes that are 3 whole steps apart. So there's our diminished triad, and the augmented triad is the other one I'm going to cover. Augmented is a chord that's made up of 2 major thirds. So we have E to G sharp, then G sharp up to C. This is a very unstable sounding chord, just like the diminished chord, but like a diminished triad sounds diminished and compact. Augmented triad sounds kind of extended. Both are very unstable, but both have a purpose and a function in music. They function often as kind of passing sounds, and they can be very beautiful when used properly. So understanding the way that they're built is important if you want to advance in your chord understanding. So we're going to do this exercise again, same thing, with the augmented triad. And the interesting thing about an augmented triad, which is similar to a fully diminished seventh chord, which we'll go over once we get into the seventh chords, but an augmented triad is symmetrical within the octave, meaning it's a major third from E to G sharp, it's a major third from G sharp to C, then it's a major third from C up to E again. So it's dividing our 12 half-step octave into 3 equal parts. It's kind of an interesting thing about the augmented chord. So I'll play this exercise with the augmented chord now. One more time. So, to put those together as a full exercise, I'm going to go major, minor, diminished, augmented, and I'm going to do major again so that it sounds stable and happy again to bring some closure to the full exercise. So I'm going to do that slowly and try to follow along. 1, 2, ready, go. Minor, diminished, augmented, major, and so these patterns on a single string have function in real musical contexts beyond just a theoretical exercise. You can use single string patterns for soloing, and sometimes I find it to be an excellent tone and timbre to solo along a single string. Because when you're switching strings, there's inevitably some difference in the timbre of the string, the timbre being the tonal quality of the string, because the strings are all different sizes. When I play an A right here, it sounds a little different than when I play the same A right here. Same A, same octave, same note, or here, or there, very different. So if I play this A, it has a much darker timbre because the string is so much bigger. Up here, that's a lighter timbre, and that's because the string is smaller. I'm playing it in the lowest position on that smaller string. It's going to have a different sound. So sometimes when I'm soloing, I like to follow along a single string. It's quite fun actually. When you practice these single string patterns, you can solo along a single string and make up interesting sounds just using that one timbre. So that is fun. It's also really applicable to slide guitar playing if you do any of that. And I'm going to be doing some slide lessons in the future, just kind of going over some of the exercises that I use to enhance my slide playing. And a lot of that is single string stuff, because the continuity that you get from using a single string with a slide is actually very nice. You can do longer runs that glide across the scale without having to do the string switching that is inevitably a little more difficult with a slide. So these single string patterns can be helpful in your slide playing as well if that's something that you like to do. So beyond the triads, we're going to talk about seventh chords, and we're going to do a similar exercise that goes through the 5 main types of seventh chords. So the 5 main types of seventh chords are the major 7 chord, the dominant 7 chord, the minor 7 chord, the half diminished 7 or minor 7 flat 5, and the fully diminished 7th chord. There are other types, but these are the 5 main types that you find the most in musical texts, and so those are the ones I'm going to go over today. And what you do from a triad, if you're not familiar, is you add one extra third on top of your triad. So if you take a major triad, I was talking about how a major triad is a major third and then a minor third on top of that. To make a 7th chord, we'd go a third up the major scale again, and that's a major third on top. So we have our 1, 3, 5, and 7 from the major scale. That gives us our 7th chord. And so 7th chords are 4-note chords versus triads are 3-note chords. So to practice this, I'm going to do a similar exercise, but it's going to be a little bit different because we're adding another note onto the the arpeggio we're playing. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start by going up the major triad, then going up to the major 7, sliding back down to the 5th, back down to the 3rd, and then to the open string. The 3rd and 5th of the chord be the 4th fret, the 7th fret, and the 11th fret would be where we're targeting for this major 7 chord. So the pattern I'm going to play is this. The second half of that, I'm going 1, 3, 5, 3, 7, octave 7, 5, 3, 1. So the whole thing. One, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. So I'm going to play that same rhythmic idea as a practice exercise through these different 7th chords. So on the major, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So that's the major 7. Now to make a dominant 7, which is the next one we're going to do, all we do here is we're going to lower this major 7th note, this D sharp up here at the 11th fret, down to a D natural on the 10th fret. We're going to do the same thing. Again, slowly. And that's our dominant 7th chord. So the major 7 again. 1, 2, ready, go. Dominant. So the next variation we'll do is by lowering the 3rd of the chord, we're going to make a minor 7 chord. This is going to keep that D natural on fret 10. That's the flat 7, which is in the minor 7 chord as well. So this is going to be a minor triad plus that flat 7 And we'll use that same rhythmic motif to play this as well, and all of them. So again, the minor is going to be our minor triad plus that flat 7. And that's our third of 5. I'm going to go through those 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dominant. Minor 7. And you may notice that we're just moving one alteration at a time. One note is moving by a half step each time for each of these 7th chords. I'm going to talk real quick about the intervals that make up those 3 7th chords. I already talked about the major 7, which is a major third, followed by a minor third, followed by a major third. The dominant chord is a major third, followed by a minor third, followed by another minor third. The minor 7 is a minor third, followed by a major third, followed by a minor third. Next, we're going to do the half diminished 7, or the minor 7 flat 5. So this is going to be a diminished triad. So a minor third, but that flat 7 is going to remain in the same place, D on the 10th fret. That's going to make up our half diminished 7. And this is a chord that you hear in what we call a minor 2-5-1. When you have a chord like D minor, and then you have E7, E minor 7 flat 5 to say an A7, back to D minor. That is the chord that is used for the 2 chord of a minor key. That's the half diminished. That's an A7 sharp 5. That's a D minor 9. So while it sounds a little off when we play it like this, it sounds very unstable. That's a sound that actually is quite beautiful when you use it in context. So we're going to do the same exercise with this minor 7 flat 5, or half diminished 7th chord. So I'm going to go 3, 4. Do that one more time. 3 and 4 and. That's our minor 7 flat 5. And before I go back through all of them, I'm going to show the last one, which is the fully diminished 7. And this one, like I mentioned with the augmented triad, is another interesting chord because it divides the 12-tone scale of 12 half steps into 4 equal parts rather than the augmented chord dividing it into 3. So a fully diminished 7th chord is all minor thirds. It's a minor third from E to G, a minor third from G to B flat, a minor third from B flat to C sharp, and then a minor third up gets us back to the root note. Again, it's another chord that sounds pretty interesting and dark when you play it by itself, but in context of a song or a chord melody, it's a really nice sounding chord. So We'll do the same exercise with this. So 3 and 4. Again. And that brings us to the end of the 5 main types of 7th chords. So now I'll put these all together into one exercise, just like we did with the triads. This time going major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, half diminished 7, fully diminished 7, and then back to the major 7 to close it out. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Dominant. Minor 7. Half diminished. Fully diminished. Major 7. At the end there, I'm just added a little E major 7 chord. Yeah, we got E on the 7th fret of the 5th string, B on the 9th fret of the 4th string, D sharp on the 8th fret of the 3rd string, and the G sharp on the 9th fret of the 2nd string. And then you can get a really nice sound by playing the open E string on bottom and top. So these single string patterns I'm a big fan of. I think that they've helped me understand the neck a lot better over the years, just through being able to picture on the instrument better how these patterns play out. I was first a piano player when I was a kid, and I picked up guitar later, and my guitar learning was mainly just learning riffs and licks and solos, pentatonic scales, those kind of things. And it wasn't until I'd been playing for a few years when I really started trying to understand theory on the instrument. And I ran into some challenges because, frankly, it is a little challenging on an instrument such as the guitar, which doesn't have fully symmetrical tuning between the strings, like, say, a violin or a cello or a bass, which have their own challenges. But because we have this odd man out here between the 2nd and 3rd string, it's a different interval than the rest of the strings. It's a major 3rd versus these are all perfect 4ths. It threw a wrinkle in my ability to really understand how intervals played out across the neck. So by having a way to visualize all of the different harmony that I was learning, all the different scales I was learning on a single string, that gave me a better anchor in which to know whether I was playing the right notes in a chord, how to find the right type of chord voicings that lay out well on guitar. Chord voicings that might work well on piano don't always work out well on guitar because piano, you can play a lot of notes close together. Guitar, you have to spread them out a little more. You can get some close voicings like this, where you're doing a straight 1, 3, 5, 7 stack. But oftentimes our chords on guitar end up putting the notes out of order. You'll have something like this, which is much more common, 1, 5, 7, 3. And so to really know the intervals that make up these different chords helped me have a guide in order to guide my ear when I was trying to find new chord voicings. So that's why I think this is really useful, and I think it could be helpful to you. And also in soloing, like I said, getting better on a single string is going to help you break out of some of the boxes you might be stuck in. Maybe you, when you're soloing, you go to your pentatonic scales, and those are great, really useful. I use them all the time. But if you're really good on a single string, you can float up a scale on a single string, and then you can land in a different shape that maybe you use less, and you'll come up with some new ideas. For example, if I was playing in A minor, starting from like the common kind of shape 1 pentatonic minor box, I could continue my soloing on a single string, and then come off into another shape. And notice I'm just kind of gliding around because I know the single string patterns really well. And then I also know my pentatonic 5 shapes or my minor 7 shapes or major really well. So when I know both of these angles of the guitar, what I call the horizontal angle, which is or the horizontal plane, which is what we're talking about today with these single string patterns. You're moving horizontally across the neck. When you combine those with your vertical patterns, which move you between the different strings, then you have the ability to fully grasp what is possible on the instrument. So it's very important to practice vertical patterns and horizontal patterns. And I think that it's more common for people to spend a lot of time working out their vertical patterns because they may see people, playing scales, shredding solos really fast and being able to just glide up these scales. But then when you want to move around, how free are you to just move around and on a single string and to connect all the patterns that you've learned seamlessly in a solo or improvisation? That's where the horizontal plane of the guitar really, really comes in handy and will help you increase your ability to navigate the instrument. So I hope that was a helpful rundown of these important harmonic structures that you find in all sorts of music. I think that if you spend some time, I know if you spend some time practicing these things, it's going to help you expand your understanding of music theory. And music theory is important to me only insofar as it is functional. And so I think of music theory as a functional practice where what you're looking for is a better understanding of the instrument that you can apply in musical situations and contexts. So if you can't apply the music theory you're learning into a song you're playing, it's very hard to make any long-lasting connections and to really understand what you're doing because it's an abstract concept. But when you apply these things into the music you're playing in a functional way, then you really can get a grasp on it. You can get it inside of your hands and inside of your ears so that it's not so strange anymore. When you're learning a new scale or a new type of chord, it's going to sound a little bit strange at first, but if you have a musical context in which to put it, that's going to really help you solidify that into your playing and your memory. And there's a lot, you can go an awful lot deeper with these single string patterns, and perhaps I'll do that in the future and go into some of the more advanced exercises that I've done over the years to move these patterns into inversions and to different string sets. I'll mention one of those exercises right now in case you like this idea and you want to take it a little further. Just using the key of E, you could go through each of the 6 strings and you could apply your single string pattern. I'm just going to do it with a major chord just to show you, but this is something that I've done at the instruction of a great teacher of mine who was very much an advocate for this kind of practice. He had really the best understanding of the guitar neck of anyone I'd ever met or studied with, and a person I greatly respect. And so he would have me do this with all the different chord types, and I found it to be extremely helpful, although at first it seemed arduous and I couldn't tell why I was doing it. But over time, it bore fruit. So I'm just going to show you this idea, and this is what we'll close with. So the last idea here is moving the major triad to each of the 6 strings, beginning from the lowest note in that chord. So I'm going to come back in and close it one more time. So I'm going to do the E major triad. It's very simple. You can add any kind of musical or rhythmic pattern that you want to do. We can do something like we did earlier. That's similar to what we did, not exactly, but then I'm going to move down to the next string. So what is the second string tuned to? That's a B. And how does that relate to the E major chord? It's the 5th of the chord. So I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm going to be starting from the 5th, so I'm going to be in an inversion of the arpeggio. So I'm going to go B, E, G. So now I've played the same exact rhythmic pattern, or very close to it, on the next string down, and this is forcing me to find that same chord I was playing on the first string, only on the second string this time and in an inversion position. So and now I'm going to take that to the next string, and this is going to be a little more tricky because now our open string is a G, which is not in the E major chord, so we got to start from the lowest note in the E major chord, which is going to be G sharp at the 1st fret, and now I'm going to be in a different inversion here, so it's going to be So you see how it gets more challenging now that we're looking at an inversion of this chord. And this is definitely a next level challenge that maybe you want to try to play around with a little bit. It can really help your understanding of not only this horizontal plane, but also the vertical plane. Because as you go, now I've started from this note, and this note on my 3 strings, and here we have an E triad. Well, if I went up to the next note on each of those strings that I played, there's my next inversion of the E major triad. Same thing for the next one. So this ties directly from the horizontal plane into the vertical plane, increasing your understanding of the neck and being able to navigate these patterns. I'm going to go to the 4th string now. And my lowest note in this chord is an E. It's going to be on the 2nd fret. And here we go. I'm going to go. So now I've got I'm not using the open string. I've got a root position triad. And just like I was saying, how I built those vertical chords off of the first note that I played on each of the strings. Do this again. Now with 4 strings. And I've got these nice inversions. So the 5th string, lowest note we've got in the E major chord is a B. It's going to be 2nd fret on the 5th string. Now I'm going to go up to the E and G sharp and be up here. So this is a second inversion triad with my fifth on the bottom. So if I play the same pattern, rhythmic pattern, and then of course have our low E string, which is going to be the exact same as the first string. So what I was saying about building the vertical shapes works through these 5 strings. Some of those get to be a lot to grab, but when we get to the 6th string, because I went from the 5th down to starting on the root again, you're not going to get the close triad. But this ties into another concept that I've talked about that I'm going to talk about a lot more in the future, and I have a full course going very deep into this concept that I call the big 3. This is close triad voicings that across all 6 strings, and these are not voicings that you'd play as full voicings, but the purpose is to show you the blueprint of the close triads across all 6 strings. And there's 3 of these, that's why I call them the big 3. And we've got, that makes all our close triad shapes in that position. Next one is this. Next one is this. Then we'd be back to the first one. And I'll put a link to the original video I did that described these big 3 shapes in the description here. So you can view that if you want to go really deep with it and go into a full course with exercises and practice workouts and visuals and the whole 9 yards. I've got a course on my site, practicemakesbettermusic.com. That's called Guitar Synergy, where I explore this idea in depth. And I will be making more videos talking about how to apply those big 3 shapes to songs and song patterns in the future. So that's that. That's through all 6 strings, playing your 1 string horizontal plane shapes of a single chord that you choose. It could be any chord. You could do it across all 6 strings for that chord, and that will force you to get better at locating the notes in a single chord across the different strings, and that's going to also assist in your building of chords and your making of interesting chord voicings. That's all for this video. Let me know if you thought it was helpful. And I've already talked a lot about how useful I think these patterns are, but I think to just summarize the key takeaways, 1 is viewing the guitar in the 2 planes, meaning the horizontal plane and the vertical plane, and not neglecting either of those planes when you're learning about chords, scales, arpeggios, anything that you're practicing. If you build a better understanding of the 2 planes on which the guitar exists, you will have a better ability to navigate the instrument fluidly. And that's really the goal. It can increase your enjoyment in playing, and I actually find these exercises to be fun to do. But maybe I'm strange. Maybe you need to slog through it at first. Usually what I notice is that when I get good at something, it becomes a lot more fun, even if it's just an exercise. So I'll be trying to tie some of these concepts into more advanced ideas in future lessons, but let me know what you thought of this lesson, and until next time, practice hard and remember to enjoy the journey. So talk to you next time.